Whole story is too long, so we'll summarize it at some first posts. The original poster shares the beginning of a long and stressful saga about planning a wedding with an extremely overbearing and dramatic mother-in-law. Mother-in-law is still emotionally stuck on her divorce from the father-in-law despite it being years ago, and acts as though the rest of the family, including father-in-law's new wife and stepdaughters, don't exist. Things escalate quickly when mother-in-law starts inserting herself into the wedding planning, even asking to be a bridesmaid so she can stand at the altar. The original poster tries to keep her included by inviting her to bridesmaid dress shopping, but mother-in-law throws a tantrum when she realizes father-in-law's stepdaughters, whom mother-in-law doesn't recognize due to being kept hidden on social media, are part of the wedding party. Mother-in-law accuses the original poster of betrayal, cries, screams, and causes a huge scene, including collapsing on their porch sobbing until neighbors call the police. The original poster reflects on how mother-in-law expects the wedding to revolve around her, and can't handle that the groom's entire family, including his step-relatives, are involved. Part 2. Cruise control ruins wedding plans. The story continues with the overbearing mother-in-law nicknamed Cruise Control, who had previously thrown dramatic tantrums after being denied a spot as a bridesmaid. Her manipulative antics escalated with constant phone calls, staged collapses at the couple's apartment, and nonstop emotional blackmail. The stress of it all caused the bride, original poster, to have a breakdown and impulsively drive to another state. When her fiancé realized how serious things had gotten, he joined her for a short getaway, where they reconnected and agreed that boundaries with his mother needed to be set. They attempted to have a mature conversation with Cruise Control, but it was derailed by her emotionally manipulative behavior. She cooked a surprise dinner, presented them with a long, handwritten letter, which original poster later burned, and shut down the discussion by crying and begging for hugs from the dear husband. Original poster tried to firmly communicate that mother-in-law had no say in their wedding decisions, especially about including dear husband's stepsisters as bridesmaids, but it had little effect. Despite the effort, the confrontation failed to change mother-in-law's behavior, and the couple began to seriously consider eloping just to escape the chaos. Part 3. Cruise Control's letter. In the last installment, Cruise Control shut down our attempted meeting by crying a lot, and gave us a long, handwritten letter to read so that we could get her point of view, which we already had plenty of, by the way. We got home and didn't read the stupid letter. It was late and we had work the next day, so I left it on the kitchen table. Now this next moment was not a particularly flattering one for dear husband. He awoke before me and read the letter to find out how maddening it would be, and he decided to hide it from me. Dear husband has been managing his mom's emotions for his entire life. He really genuinely thought that it was not just okay to hide it, but the right thing to do. I looked and had to give up and go to work, and then I teased the truth out of him after he got home that evening. After taking a few deep breaths until the red tint faded from the edges of my vision. Seriously, what was he thinking? I explained that, unlike his mom, I'm a freaking adult. I can manage my own emotions, thank you very much. By all means, warn me if it's bad. I appreciate the heads up. However, I'm not made of glass and I can make my own decisions. He can't treat me like a child who can't handle the truth. It's insulting. He fetched it for me and sat across from me and watched my face as I read it. Keep in mind, I'm already in a bad mood by now. I burned the letter later, so this is what I remember. I will do my best to summarize her mental gymnastics. These are just the highlights. Parentheses are my personal thoughts and feelings. Page 1. I'm a single mother with only one child. This is my only opportunity to have a say in my kid's wedding. Weddings are traditionally for the parents, not the kids. Letting the bride and groom choose their own guests is a modern invention, and that's not how it used to be. I'm a traditional lady, and I like things to be old-fashioned when it benefits me, but I'm willing to make concessions for modern culture when it benefits me. She wanted us to be grateful that she was letting us choose our guest list and setting it up so that she was having her right as mother of the groom taken away so we should give her control over just a few guests, father-in-law and his family. Page 2. I want to be happy on the day of my only child's wedding, and I simply can't and won't feel happy if I have to see father-in-law. I still can't stand to see his name written down, and it will hurt me if his name is in the invitations or the programs. We hadn't gotten anywhere near that point in planning yet, let alone seeing his face for the first time in years. He and stepmother-in-law are a toxic presence in my life. They aren't and never have been present in her life. She goes to great lengths to avoid them. And I can't expose myself to that. A good person wouldn't ask me or expect me to. I raised you to be kind and understanding to my freaking insane desires, so I know you will let me have it my way. She also graciously allowed me to keep my bridesmaids, though she said that 4 is too many and 2 is plenty. It's not necessary if you're just doing this to indulge them. She didn't want dear husband's stepsisters to be my bridesmaids, but she'd let me have it. Okay, she did say that I should caution them not to talk about father-in-law or their mom around her. Pages 3 to 6 or so, I can't remember how many pages it was, might have been more, were 3 suggested compromises and her stupid justifications for them. Number 1 was that one of dear husband's parents could have the ceremony and one of them could have the reception. She wanted the reception because of the mother-son dance, because it's her right, blah, blah, blah. So father-in-law would get the 15-minute ceremony and then have to leave and not speak to anyone. Yep, cool plan. Number 2 was that we could get legally married at a courthouse and then have our marriage before God on separate days as separate events. She's more religious and deserved the church ceremony with the pretty dresses and flowers, of course. Men aren't as interested in that, and I'm sure father-in-law would love to be your witness. Latin Nixane, then she would go straight to the reception and stay until cake. And then she would leave and let father-in-law come and enjoy the rest of the evening, when people would be getting drunk, which she is uncomfortable with. Again, how convenient. This would also mean that father-in-law wouldn't be in any of our wedding photos. The next idea of hers is what I still can't wrap my head around, no matter how I try. It's just too damn stupid. You could see a mass of idiocy this large from space. This amount of stupidity is larger than some small nations. This lunacy has its own gravitational field. You could spend a day blindfolded, shooting Nerf pellets at a vintage typewriter, and come up with a less nonsensical plan than this one. She said that in weddings, only the father of the bride and the mother of the groom matter, because the father of bride has to walk his daughter down the aisle, and the mother of the groom is the one who plans the rehearsal dinner and opens speeches at the reception. I don't know where she got that. Plus the groom, mother of the groom dance is just so important. Therefore, not only is father-in-law completely unnecessary, my mother is unnecessary. She said that my mom is just a guest like any other, so dear husband shouldn't feel bad if his dad isn't there for the whole thing. If he wants things to be fair, he can uninvite my mom to make things even Stevens. Then we can have a mini reception later with just the bridesmaids, groomsmen, father-in-law, you see, and my mom. That way, both of our families will be represented equally at the large reception and the small one. What she suggested was basically just a brunch. My mom deserves better than brunch. She said we could make it like a mini wedding and with a photographer so that everyone is happy. Freak out of here. My mom could still be a part of the wedding by attending the thing where the bride and bridesmaids get ready together because all a mother of bride really wants is to get to see her little girl in her big white dress in her special day. She basically wanted to Judgment of Solomon my wedding. So basically, cruise control bridesplaned what weddings are all about and what should and shouldn't matter to us. Bridesplaned, momsplaned, bitchsplained. She got a lot of things very wrong and assumed we'd never bother to Google it. She also assumed her own son is petty and immature enough to go with option 3, which he would never. She never mentioned stepmother-in-law in these plans. I don't know if she meant that we should just treat her as a +1 for father-in-law or if she just assumed we wouldn't invite her because of her fees. She refuses to accept that stepmother-in-law has been a parent to dear husband. He doesn't even call her his stepmother. I finished the letter and just said, "Your mother is insane. She is crazy. She's a crazy person. She'll never be happy." He agreed, but I was pissed because he was kind of laughing it off. Like, oh, haha, that's my mom, all right. The stuff I put up with. What a goofy letter. I was like, this is our wedding. It's important. This isn't letting her choose a restaurant and putting up with it because it's not a hill to die on. This is actually worth the fight, and I don't think you're willing or able to fight her on it. That is no bueno. You need to take this seriously starting now. Holy hell, man. He sobered up a bit and was like, yeah, I know. I've been dreaming of marrying you for so long and I shouldn't let her have this. I said, don't you find this depressing? It's making me miserable. I feel like I can't win. Dear husband shrugged and said, I've never won. I gave up on that a long time ago. We had a heart-to-heart about how he'd become a defeatist, but I wasn't that way, and that was part of the problem. He copes by letting go of his emotional investment in things cruise control doesn't want him to have, but I can't and won't do that, so I'm distressed and he's just chilling. Next thing I did was take that letter and bring it straight to my parents and my bridesmaids so that they would see what we were all up against. To this day, my parents hate cruise control. Part 4: Cruise Control and the Letter Aftermath. Just to recap, these events happened 2 years ago. Advice is not needed, I'm just retelling these stories for added background. In the last installment, I described Cruise Control's letter in which she helpfully outlined several options for us to better serve her massive ego and delicate feelings. The letter ended up being a pretty damning document of what a fucknut she is, so I showed it to pretty much everybody, as one does. The first people I showed it to were my bridesmaids, which included dear husband's stepsisters. They had been named in the letter as unnecessary, and they did not like that one bit. We talked about what an insane crap cruise control was, and we tried and failed to come up with plans. I was depressed about the situation, and I wanted my mom, damn it. She was gobsmacked by the letter, and she comforted dear husband and I. We had a nice weekend with my parents, and she made my favorite cookies, so it wasn't all bad. It was important to me that dear husband was there so he could see a few people demonstrate a normal reaction to that letter. I told dear husband that I was not going to make the decision for him, but that he should find a way to tell cruise control that he wasn't going to uninvite his dad. I said that I refused to disrespect his family on the day that our families are joined, and I would be ashamed to get married in a way that prioritizes his mom over the rest of his family, so I wouldn't do it. He can take his time, but wedding stuff won't progress until he makes a decision. Meanwhile, I'm getting bombed with calls and emails about wedding crap. Cruise Control has gone to some kind of bridal expo and picked up some brochures. She scanned and emailed a bunch of freaking brochures. Holy shit, lady. It can wait a few days. This isn't an urgent matter. Just give them to me in person if it's so important to you. She sent me a lot of stupid articles from places like Cosmo about wedding trends. She would write these long emails and copy and paste a ton of pictures into them. They were insanely long. I don't know how to describe how long they were, except that I'd start reading and think, wait a second, how long is this thing? And spend the next few minutes scrolling to the bottom to find out. I would say, dear husband, your mom sent an email and I think she meant to send it to you. You know, just to torture him a little. The emails were also organized like they were each a volume unto themselves. She really believed that she was creating the ultimate resource for me. One email would be just about dresses. One email would be just about cakes. The subject line would be something like, Guide to Dresses, Current Trends, Local and Online Retailers. She would then go through what she believed to be the current trend in dresses and use 749 to 956 pictures, and then write the pros and cons of different styles. Then list a bunch of stores, the price range, the pros and cons, and contact info. It was insane. She must have made this her full-time job. She was approaching it as if she was writing an academic paper on which bakeries in our area were worth checking out. I tried to tell her that it was unnecessary and that she should save her time, and she would say that she enjoys it and views it as a fun hobby. I had agreed with dear husband that she was his job to handle, so I didn't say anything about how the wedding was pretty much off. In her mind, it was full speed ahead. In hindsight, I should have just told her. She started coming over. She brought fabric swatches, catalogs, photographs of venues that she had taken herself and then printed out. One day I got home from work and dear husband was there, looking miserable, and Cruise Control had set up our kitchen table with a demo of what she thought our place settings, tablecloths, etc. should be. She had just gone out and bought a tablecloth and 4 sets of plates, chargers, cutlery, and glasses. She really thought this would wow us and we'd go ahead and buy the same set for the whole wedding so that hers wouldn't go to waste. At this point, I just started lying to her. First, she asked me if I was ready to go wedding dress shopping again, angling for an invite, and I lied and said that I had chosen to wear my mother's wedding dress. Next, she asked if I still needed a veil, and I claimed that I was wearing my grandmother's veil. She asked about shoes. I said I had bought some. Things continued this way for a while. I would lie in such a way that she couldn't call and try to snoop. I would say, my aunt is making cupcakes instead of a wedding cake. That way, she couldn't call a bakery. Meanwhile, the wedding was effectively canceled. Remember that cruise control has no friends. She was the only person who believed it was still happening, and no one was going to confirm or deny that to her. I told dear husband that I didn't want to think about it because I didn't feel like we were on the same team. I didn't want to plan a wedding that I wasn't excited about. He had to make a decision about cruise control, and I wouldn't make it for him. Dear husband was getting stressed out about this because his mom was still running around and trying to claim a wedding task for herself. She was upset that she hadn't gotten to help pick any of the imaginary components of the wedding, and she kept crying to him and saying stuff like, "Don't tell regret for two, but I'm very upset and wish she would include me." He was afraid that she would try to book something and end up spending money on a wedding venue, and once she did that, we would have to tell her no, and she'd erupt like a small volcano. Dear husband started having panic attacks. I begged him to go to therapy, and when I mentioned therapy, he had another panic attack, so I stopped mentioning it. One day, she came over with her own mother's old wedding dress and asked me to try it on to be sure. She made a lot of comments about how my mom's dress must be a poofy-sleeved 80s disaster, and this vintage gown of her mother's was timeless. It was nice looking, but there was a weird pink bow tacked onto the back right above the butt, and the pink dye had seeped into the white fabric of the dress. We removed it, and it turned out the bow was covering a hole. I said thanks, but no thanks, and ushered her out the door. I later found out that it wasn't her mother's wedding dress at all. I don't know where she got it. I told dear husband this ends now. I don't want her coming over and pushing wedding stuff on me anymore. Either you say something by the end of the weekend, or I will. I called my mom and cried to her about how much this sucked, and she told me to come over. I did, and I spent the weekend at her house again. A couple of my bridesmaids ended up joining me there. They love my mom. She was that mom that becomes everyone's second mom. And we all formulated a plan over margaritas. Part 5. Cruise control and the wedding that wasn't. I didn't want to leave anyone hanging for long, so I typed this quickly. So 2 years ago, cruise control was making me crazy with her wedding shenanigans. I was angry all the time. Dear husband was having panic attacks, and we had gotten nowhere. I wasn't going to marry him under these conditions, and he wasn't going to confront his mother under these conditions. It was a mess. I was close to dumping him. I had started lying about wedding plans because, as bad as cruise control was, she would be 100x worse if I told her the wedding was off, and it was her fault for being a damn nightmare. This led to what dear husband and I now recall as the cocoon of lies. I gave dear husband the weekend to figure out how to tell his mother off, and I left to go to my parents. We talked in earnest about whether dear husband was really worth marrying. My bridesmaids, who were old family friends, came and joined, and we had a sleepover like we were back in grade school. It was really sweet, and it made me feel a lot better. One of my bridesmaids suggested that we lie like we already had been. She said, "The only thing that keeps her from bothering you about things is saying that it's already been handled. Why not claim that you're already married? Lie and say you eloped. She'll freak, and then she'll get over it." My mom agreed. You guys are not ready to get married right now, but if you have a pretend elopement, it will get her off of your back. Then you can plan a real wedding quietly, or you can find out that you're not meant to be and part ways. I really think that dear husband should just handle his mom, but what he really needs is space and therapy. If it will give him the space he needs, lying to cruise control isn't a bad thing to do. My parents and bridesmaids loved this idea and continued spitballing. They said we could pretend the real wedding is just our honeymoon and elope for real, or we could get married on our 1-year anniversary, or. I did not love this idea. I thought it had a huge ability to backfire, and I still wanted a real wedding with everyone there. I also didn't want to start a marriage based on lies, but it was pointed out to me that that ship had already sailed,